Welcome into the Big Ten Network studios alongside the former Wolverine, Michelle McMahon. I'm Kara Lentz, and to some, December might mean holiday season. To us, it means NCAA Volleyball. Two Big Ten teams advance to the Final Four this weekend in Louisville, Kentucky. Michelle, overall, how do you think the Big Ten fared in this NCAA tournament?
I mean, I'm extremely impressed by the Big Ten. You have 6 out of the 7 teams that made the tournament in the Sweet 16, and then you have 4 in the Elite 8. And then you have 2 in the Final Four in Penn State and Michigan. I'm incredibly impressed with this Big Ten tournament.
Well, I'm sure one team that isn't a shock there is #1 seed Penn State advancing to the Final Four. And if we take a look at how this bracket actually breaks down, they'll face Oregon. Oregon's first trip to the NCAA Final Four. On the lower part of that bracket, Texas, a very familiar face in this NCAA Championship Series, and they're facing Michigan, also their first trip to the NCAA Final Four. Your alma mater, Michelle, must be a pretty exciting time for those Michigan Wolverines. Let's hear what they had to say after their win.
It hasn't really sunk in. It's crazy at this point. I mean, we've worked so hard, and it's just really nice to have it pay off. We're all jacked about it.
It's like a dream, but I know that we could have done it this whole time, and no one believed in us but ourselves, and that was the key to our victory.
This is just a special team. I don't know. We just have a great chemistry. We're having fun on the court, and we know how to take care of business. I mean, that's what we're saying. We're calling all these little, road trips, they're business trips, and, we're handling it like that.
Well, Michelle, you do this for a job, so this is part of your business, and it's pretty good that you get paid for this because you called Michigan actually being the dark horse team. All the credit to you. How do you think that they performed?
Hey, well, I did pick them as my dark horse team. Very impressed with my last go-around of that. But Michigan, I think the difference I've seen with them is, like Claire McElhenney mentioned, is that team chemistry. From top to bottom, they're embodying this different philosophy. And they're all coming together. 14 strong is one of their mantras. The team, the team, the team. And they've had some impressive wins. Michigan State is a tough road win in the Sweet 16. They pulled it out in straight sets. And then they beat the #2 team in Stanford. And that was incredible defense. And I thought Lexi Irwin and Lexi Dannemiller certainly stood out in those 2 matches.
Well, if you look at this Texas team, they've won 21 of their past 22 matches. So talk about this team being on a hot streak. If we go inside the matchup, you mentioned the physical play of Texas. How can Michigan handle that?
Well, Texas is a very traditional team. They're not very deceptive. They're going to go at you with what they're running, and they're going to do it well because they are so physical. But since Michigan is so much more undersized, what they need to do is serve aggressively, and that's one of their strong points. If they can get them out of system, more often than not, they'll have a lot of success in forcing them into that one-dimensional offense, that high ball outside. Not to say Texas's outside hitters can't handle it, but that will definitely help, as well as their first ball contact. That's going to be huge for the Wolverines this set. If they can control the ball and run a little bit more of a creative offense, per se, to open those holes on the other side in Texas and utilize their shots, move the ball around, I think that's going to be a huge key for them. And overall, just that team chemistry is really going to pull through in this final stretch. And I think Texas might be looking forward to the national championship since Michigan is such an underdog. They might be looking for, the big Penn State match. And I think that could be towards Michigan's advantage.
And also, as of December 9th, Texas does lead the nation in their hitting percentage, so not an easy opponent there. All right, moving on to #1 seed Penn State. Like we stated, not really a surprise to see the Nittany Lions here. They've won 5 of the past 6 NCAA championships.
Well, obviously, an outstanding resume, and what would we expect? Anything less than Penn State. A little bit more of a disappointing finish for them last year, but this year they certainly took care of business with a little bit of an relatively easy route as far as comparison to other Big Ten schools in the tournament.
Well, you look at some of the players on their team. Micah Hancock broke the NCAA record for service aces in the tournament. I mean, when you look at some other people on this team who's playing well, who sticks out?
Katie Slay, obviously, and then Dominique Gonzalez, their libero, is doing an outstanding job with ball control and first ball contact. But Micah Hancock is certainly going to be a key in this match for them. Oregon is a very solid team, and she needs to distribute the ball very balanced to all of her hitters, but also establish herself and her middles in the offense right away. She does a nice job of seeing the block and utilizing those open shots, and that's going to be a huge key against Oregon because they are a very physical team, as well as if Penn State can serve the ball very well and get Oregon out of system, that will be key because Oregon runs a very fast and unique, non-traditional style of offense, and they play phenomenal defense. So Penn State really needs to bring their A game on all cylinders. They need to have all 5 of their hitters going, Micah Hancock, and serving.
Well, this is also an Oregon team that beat Nebraska. So what must Penn State do that Nebraska didn't do?
Well, as I mentioned, it's that physicality that I think Penn State has, that extra push. They have that extra depth in their lineup. And across the board, they get a lot of production out of their middle blockers, which frees up their pins on the outside. And when you have Ariel Scott one-on-one, she'll put the ball away almost every time. But Oregon has a key player in Bergsma, and they are going to really have to focus on her and shut her down. But if they can shut down Bergsma, which Nebraska couldn't, then they will have a lot of success this match, because she is maybe 50% of their offense from what I watched from the past games. She's an outstanding athlete, great player to watch.
That game takes place at 9 p.m. Eastern in Louisville, Kentucky. And then taking also a look at some other Big Ten teams that didn't necessarily get to the Final Four. If we actually look at the Elite Eight contenders that we have here, Minnesota, you see they're getting knocked out by one of their own in Penn State. And also Nebraska, as we talked about, losing to Oregon. Nebraska had this motto last year when they got knocked out by K-State in the Coliseum of unfinished business. They didn't seem to finish their business this year.
I don't think they did either, and that's a little bit disappointing to Big Ten fans and, of course, the Nebraska fans. But I don't think they played bad in the Oregon match, because John Cook even mentioned that. He said, I don't know what we could have done more as coaches, system-wise, as working hard and limiting their errors. I mean, that just proves the small margin of errors in these matches. If you hit the final stretch, 5 errors more than the other team is going to be detrimental, and it's going to cause a loss.
You named some names on this team: Hannah Worth, Lauren Cook, Gina Mancuso. Talk about maybe the impact that those players have had on this team and the type of roles that they've had on the team as well.
Well, on and off the court. And as a younger player, when you have those type of leaders to look up to, that's incredible. And that's one of the things that they mentioned in the press conference, of establishing that greatness for Nebraska volleyball. And that's something that they really have held true to all season long. They've really put their hearts in it, and they've definitely exhausted their gas tanks. They're empty. I think they're ready to be done. But they've certainly raised the bar for these younger players to look up to. Okay, this is the standard of Nebraska volleyball, though disappointing finish in the Elite Eight, not really that disappointing for any other Big Ten team. But that's what the younger players have to look up to, and I think John Cook has definitely given them the credit that they deserve as the senior class now leaving us.
Well, also getting some fresh faces into that program, as well as a fresh venue. This was the last season they played in the Coliseum. Next year, they'll move to the Devaney Center, so not a lot of new looks for that Cornhusker team. Another team that got knocked out there, we saw Minnesota, but this is also a Gopher team that had first-year head coach Hugh McCutcheon, the Olympic volleyball team coach, and just his first season advances to the Elite Eight. They have to be happy with that finish, despite not advancing much more.
Absolutely, and this Minnesota team is definitely shows a lot of promise, and I'm very excited to see what Hugh McCutcheon does. They're returning some key players in Santana and Dixon, both very powerful players. Santana does a nice job from the service line on defense, as well as executing on offense. And then you have Dixon, such a powerful force on the block. They really had unfortunate placement in this tournament to meet up with Penn State so early on in the tournament.
Well, if you even look over the grand view of the bracket, 5 Big Ten teams on the one side and 2 Big Ten teams on the other side. So kind of a rough road for some teams to get there. Michigan State, they did not have an easy road, but they did defend UCLA, or they did defeat UCLA, the defending NCAA champion. When you look at the way the Big Ten has fared, especially against maybe some Pac-12 or Big 12 schools, this has to be a huge statement on the caliber of conference play.
Absolutely, and I would say this match of all of them shows the depth in the Big Ten Conference. I mean, UCLA is the defending national champions. What more can you say about that? And I think Kathy George does a phenomenal job with this group. Corey Moster and Lauren Wazinski, outstanding players for this Spartan team. I've really been impressed with their defense all season long, and I think that match against Michigan in the Sweet 16 was a little bit different for both teams. They were playing in California against a huge rivalry school, so obviously it was very cool. I mean, both teams wanted to win so bad. They lost in straight sets, but Michigan State has had an outstanding season, very well-coached group. I've liked what I've seen from them all season long.
All right, Michelle, we are actually traveling down to Louisville for the NCAA championships this weekend, beginning Thursday at 7 p.m. between Michigan and Texas. What are you most looking forward to?
I mean, the atmosphere. This is what you live for. When you are an athlete, when you sign and commit to your school, that is your goal, the Final Four, the national championship. And this is just so cool. As a former athlete, you understand as a former athlete, this is something, although I won't be suiting up and putting my jersey on, but I get to experience the atmosphere and ask the questions, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, walking around in the spandex and the uniform, right?
I don't know if I can do that anymore.
Well, you were also an NCAA volleyball participant. 2 times you advanced to the Sweet 16, 1 time to the Elite 8. What is the X factor that a team has to have in order to take away that national champion?
I mean, we've talked about this. I think it's team chemistry. I really do. I think at this point in the tournament, you have talented teams across the board. But that's what makes Michigan almost a dangerous team, because they're cruising right now, and they have that team chemistry, that 14 strong. They are the underdogs. They have nothing to lose at this point. But I think team chemistry on both sides. Penn State, obviously, a phenomenal team. They could very well win this national championship, too. But it's all going to come down to how they mesh, how they gel, because it is such a momentum sport with volleyball.
Well, keep tuning or clicking on btn.com for all of your scores and updates from this NCAA tournament. For Michelle McMahon, I'm Kara Lentz, and we'll hope to catch you here real soon.